manager for I'm the project manager for Boston Parks for the improvements to McLean Playground. And it looks like we have, at least at this point, kind of a small group here, but I'll take you through the introductions and then turn it over to our design consultant team, Crowley Cottrell. But first, I want to thank everybody for giving us time on this Tuesday night. We really appreciate it. And we know that the playground means a lot to that community and the Excel Academy next door. So it's wonderful to have your feedback. And if I could have the next slide, please. I just want you to be aware that our department will be recording the meeting and posting it to our project webpage so that people who aren't able to be here tonight or want to go over something again will have a chance to take a look at that. And part of what that means is that there may be some participants who will also be recording the meeting. And if you don't wish to be recorded, please keep your microphone and your camera off. Thanks. And thanks. So during the presentation, it would be helpful if you could keep your video and your microphone off. And then when it's time for the question and answer after the presentation, if you're joining by phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand to ask questions or give comments. If you're on the web, you can chat to ask questions or comments or give responses. And you can also raise your hand to ask for audio or video permission to ask questions and again, give comments. So next, please. So this is our team. And first I'll introduce the team and then Crowley Cottrell is going to recap the process so far and present 3 design options with precedent images. And then we'll have a discussion and question and answer session. So the project team for Boston Parks is me. Nate Frazee has been kind enough to back me up because I've been in and out a little bit. Christine Brandeo is with our, she's our outreach coordinator and we're so grateful to her for manning this meeting. And then Natalia Benitez is the Office of Neighborhood Services rep. And I don't think she'll be joining us tonight, but I thought that some of you might know her to begin with anyway. And I just wanted to give her a heads up that she may be getting some calls. And then for the design team for Crowley Cottrell, we have Naomi Cottrell, who's going to take the lead tonight. Anna Stoley, who's a designer who's been working on the project, and Jessica Brown, who's also been involved. And they're all here tonight. So I think, Naomi, I'm going to give it to you to talk about what we've done to date and where we are. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Annie. Glad to be here tonight, everyone. I'm suffering from a little bit of a cold, so if you hear that on my voice, it's I apologize for that. We did want to sort of bring folks through the park process so far. We are at our second public meeting event this evening, but what has come before us? We know that there are folks from the community that looked at this park and applied for CPA funding, which is not granted. But the Boston Parks and Recreation Department got capital money secured to do this design process and the construction process. So we had a kickoff meeting in October, and then We actually had an engagement session with some of you folks from the neighborhood where we met together and we went through potential options and really listened to you all about what was working and what's not working at the site. And so a lot of what we heard at the meeting in October is part of this presentation as far as the things that we've considered. I hope that anybody who's on this call tonight has taken our online opinion survey. We can, that's something that's still online and live, and we'll be closing it soon, but something to just let you all know. And then some other things that we've been doing out on site. There's been topographic surveying done on the site to get all of our base maps correct. And we're in the process of now getting specifically an arborist to come and to not only assess the trees, but to in the near future do some tree work. So tonight we're here at this public meeting where we're going to be giving some options. And then going forward, our schedule really is that we'll be coming back to you later in the winter with a final plan that's based on feedback that we have tonight. And then we'll start doing construction documents so that we can start construction in the summer, this upcoming summer. So at the meeting that we had in October, we wanted to just go through what we heard from folks at the community meeting. There were some very, there's consensus in and around what needs to happen here, what people were interested in seeing. And some of those things were, concerns about visibility. And so the opportunity through this project to increase visibility from the street into the park. People did talk about how the basketball court is something that's very important. There was a lot of feedback that we received about adding playground equipment for older kids. The 5 to 12-year-olds that aren't served by other local playgrounds. We heard about drainage issues, some concerns about the existing walls, an interest in having tables and seating. And then we heard that there's a concern about grass because of lack of maintenance and shade. For those of you who are in the community that don't know your neighbors at Excel Academy, we will say that they are really important users of the site during the day, and people are, I'm sure, are aware of that. So we did have an opportunity also to reach out to the folks at Excel and talk to them about how they use the space. And so we have this opportunity here where this is not specifically a schoolyard, but it does serve the function of providing open space to the public and to the school at the same time. So some of the things are similar that they were interested in hearing or seeing in this improvement project. So one of the big things that they use within the space is the open asphalt areas. So they wanted those areas improved because they'll bring out nets or they'll have games and other things that are really in need of open play areas that don't have, say, fences, board barriers, or obviously any trip hazards with roots coming through pavement or anything like that. They're also very interested in maintaining the basketball court and also call their attentions to the drainage issues that exist on site. So I want to quick just walk through the existing conditions of the site and get everybody oriented to the plans that you'll see moving forward. This is the orientation that we'll be showing. So we have Bennington Street at the bottom of the page and Saratoga Street at the top, Excel Academy as the neighbor to the right, and then some residential neighbors to the left. As you all know, the site is predominantly asphalt, with both the basketball court and the rest of the area having been asphalted over after the trees were put in. The trees, as a result, have been heaving the pavement up because they do not have adequate root zones. There is no play equipment, again, with the asphalt. It is mostly here for open play. The benches are also run down. Basketball court is at a lower area and has a drain, but it is in a lower area that you sort of slope down into. We have the low brick walls that run on Bennington Street and on Saratoga Street, and then the high brick walls on the opposite sides. So any of the plans that you see will see the trees, the walls, and the basketball court really remaining in the same places, just to orient yourself. So we like to show schemes, and we are going to quickly show 3 schemes, and then we do want to hear feedback from everybody. One of the primary things that we want to hear tonight really has to do with the composition of the types of spaces and where they are on site. We will get into some of the details of things like play equipment or seating, walls, fences, other things as we move forward. But this diagram really is just to show the overall program and what fits into the space. So one of the things in the scheme 1, this is very similar to the way in which the site is used right now, with the 1 quadrant being basketball. We're looking at improving and maintaining a flexible open space on this side of the park. And then really looking at the long, narrow area that runs along Bennington Street as an area where we could have playground and a little bit of a gathering spot or a plaza. In this scheme, we are looking at taking down the walls that run along Bennington Street and Saratoga, and providing gates. So a fence to maintain the space, but to keep the ability to be able to see through, and then having gates to monitor activity coming in and out. So this drawing is just a little bit more of a plan that shows you what we're thinking in this scheme. So I'll go through some of the things that are part of this option. So we are showing up on Bennington Street a linear playground and the opportunity to potentially have some sort of playful sculpture in this narrow area between the trees. We're really conscious of and are going to be working with the arborist who's doing some tree work to get some recommendations on how we best keep the trees healthy, as well as having the ability to add in some of these amenities. So what you're seeing here is the long, narrow play equipment that does fit between trees and planting beds to keep them viable and growing, as well as safety surfacing. We're showing here also along Bennington Street the opportunities for some dining tables, picnic tables, areas to gather. So imagining that there's maybe passive recreation, adults, other folks that are gathering while children play. And then the rest of this site is pretty simple. We are keeping and maintaining this open space as a flexible open space. There's some of the things that we are trying to do. We are keeping and maintaining a curb area between basketball and this open play area, but we are improving that flexible play area by taking down benches and fences that break up the space in the middle. We would be doing some kind of paving for these trees so that you can still use this space up and down on the page. So I think I'll move on to the next scheme. Again, though, we are thinking that the sides on Bennington and Saratoga would be fenced within gates, that a double gate here on the side, so that potentially folks, if you need to bring bigger pieces of equipment, like from Excel Academy, can come in through the backside, and a single pedestrian gate in through the middle here. This is just some of the visualizations through precedent images of what things might look like. So before I move on to the next scheme, thinking about climbing, some sort of sculptural piece, this long linear play structure, which might have slides and climbing towers and maybe some net or other balancing pieces. Again, looking at having some kind of picnic table. And then really in this area that we're calling the open play area, we would think about and consider what that surfacing is. Is it asphalt? Is it something that's maybe more permeable to help with our drainage? And does it have areas zoned out with paint and other improvements? So this is scheme 2, and it's slightly different from scheme 1. The biggest difference here is that we want to hear from you all if you're interested in potentially taking up this whole area that runs along Bennington Street as a single playground area, so that whole area between the first rows of trees could be a place for play. And what we're doing is we're taking out the gathering spot that we had in the previous scheme and actually creating a gathering spot that's in between the basketball area and the flexible open space. So this is a variation on the last scheme. Again, we have the opportunity to mix up how we think about the enclosure to the park. And in this scheme, we are still showing a fence that would run along the playground on Bennington, but thinking maybe you would still like to keep a little bit of enclosure on the backside. So I want to hear about that, with whether or not walls and a gate here is still something that might be something we would consider. So for this scheme, just to walk you through it, what we have here again is play equipment and play surfacing in this front area along Bennington. What we can do in this scheme is redirect the entrance to the park. And so what we're showing here is that the entrance would actually be off to the side. And what that does for us when we remove this wall is it actually gives us the ability to have a piece of play equipment that's not just a long linear piece. This could be something that is an area that is, a rounder play structure, something that's a climbing dome, and we'll show you what that might look like, as well as then other pieces that are smaller pieces that would be scattered through the space. This area in the middle is something we want to point out to you. We do think that it would be interesting to create a playful multi-leveled seating area along the middle here. And our thinking here is that it then becomes platforms for either performance or for just sitting to watch a game of basketball, or sitting to watch play events that might happen in this open play area. We are in this scheme thinking about taking out the 2 trees that are in the middle of this area to really open the space up. So what we would say we would do for that is, if we were to be allowed to do that, there's some concern about the trees. When we get the assessment from the arborist, we'll know a little bit more about the viability of those 2 trees. But if this is an option to keep this open so that there's lots of ability to have open play, we would add in then trees along the edge so that we continue to have a nice shaded play area in here. So all of the interior fences would be removed from this so that there would be more free movement and the ability to be able to see better from one area to the other, with the exception of we would still keep high basketball around the basketball courts and specifically on the 2 edges. So what that might look like, this upper image is an idea behind how this area between the 2 main play spaces might look like. A series of, say, boxes or benches that could be, again, used for various things: sitting, playing, viewing a sporting event. Again, thinking about the open areas of play, that could be something that is painted with direction for people, but also very open, very flexible for the school or others to use. And then finally, this lower image is what we're thinking about for the centerpiece. So again, if we were to fill the centerpiece with a piece of equipment, and that was made possible by changing the entrance, by removing the walls, it gives us the opportunity to have a lot more play opportunities for a lot more kids at the same time, because you can get a larger piece of equipment. So I'm going to move to scheme 3 now. So again, this is the diagram that shows how things are zoned in this idea. And in this idea, we thought about making the basketball court actually a little bit smaller. Right now, the basketball court is an adult or professional sized basketball court. And high school or middle school sized basketball courts are actually about 10 feet smaller end to end. So what that gives us the opportunity to do is that if we were to be able to make basketball a little smaller, we could then have a track or some sort of flexible open space that really connects in and around basketball as an ability to be able to play, even while basketball is going on. We've looked at then bringing the playground out of this front area along Bennington Street and putting it more centralized within the park. It gives us, again, the opportunity to have play structures that are more round, less linear, just more flexibility as far as the kind of play equipment that we can find. We are still adding in a little bit of gathering with some picnic opportunities along Bennington Street. But then the rest of the purple areas, really areas that would be maintained with paving so that they were flexible and open. What this does is that it's that flexible open space is not just a single space, but there's several different spaces. We'll show you what that looks like. So what you're seeing in this scheme is that the playground is in the middle of the park, farther away from tree roots, a little bit more flexibility as far as the shape of the equipment that we can fit in here. We do have these two small picnic areas on either end of this linear space on Bennington Street. We have removed barriers. In this scheme, we would want to remove all of the barriers between basketball and the other play areas and create a grade that's flatter throughout here, so that there's even movement. And so we are keeping the walls in this scheme on Bennington and Saratoga and adding gates. And part of the reason why we can do that is so that we can raise the grade and invest money into really raising the grade and having some new drainage opportunities within the space. I guess the last thing that I want to point out about this is the track that we've put in by shrinking the basketball court to that high school or middle school size. We would be able to put in some sort of track that could be used as a trike track, or that's used as a little bit of a walking loop. But you can also see here that we're maintaining all of the trees on the site and still have little rooms for occupation. And so what might that look like? Well, again, we could have another big climbing structure in the middle here, something that's large that fits really only in a couple spots on the site. So really taking up this area for a larger piece of play equipment. We're just showing in this middle image here what a track might look like. Really, it would probably just be something that is coplanar on the same level with the rest of the park, but that it is painted in a way that shows people that it's for walking and delineates that area for that specific use. And then again, these two picnic areas starting to just have a little bit of areas for passive recreational gathering. So that's what we have prepared for you tonight. We do have the three options both showing here as a a concept with how we're really moving that program around, and three ways of kind of deciding where we're going to put the different elements of the site. I think we would love to hear from the community how important, how much play equipment is important to you all, and how important it is to have big, wide open, flexible open spaces. Or if you'd like to have it be a little bit more like in the third scheme, little outdoor rooms. So I'm going to move forward to the next, which really shows the three schemes in their illustrated forms so that we can really talk about these. Now I could, I'm going to go back because this is we'll talk about our next meetings. But let me do this. I want to put that slide up. Let me see if I can go back. Oh, this is somebody who just. Okay. I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute and I'm going to pull that screen back up. Annie, I don't know if you want to, how we want to open up comments to folks.
If people want to raise their hand, I'll mute them.
Okay.
Jessica?
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Jessica Curtis. I live at 742 Saratoga Street. So this is a very exciting development. And I love that you're keeping the trees. I'm really glad to see that. I think you were asking what our priorities are for this space. I have an 8-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. And the 3-year-old has a condition that limits his mobility. So I love the idea of incorporating a playground and was curious because we also have Cuneo Playground, which is very close to us as well. So I was curious about the ages you were thinking of targeting for this playground. I think we may have a need in the immediate community for something for slightly older kids. And then also was curious if you had thought about incorporating playground design elements that are more all-inclusive. I'm thinking of the Lamson playground in Jeffreys Point, which is more, uses more of a model where kids can sort of climb up a hill. So it's great for children who are maybe not walking or who have difficulty walking, and still has a lot of fun elements for kids who are completely mobile as well. So those are just a couple of initial thoughts. Oh, I guess one more thing I will say is that I have a slight preference for having a playground that is located a little further away from the entrance, just from a safety perspective, but also respect that that might not work as well for the Excel's needs. Thanks.
I tried to write down all your questions, Jessica, so I'm going to try to answer them one at a time. So within traditional playground products, there are typically 2 to 5-year-old products, and then there's 5 to 12. And we are really trying to focus on the 5 to 12 because of the other offerings that are in the neighborhood. So what we would be looking for is that 5 to 12 age group. As far as mounding or mobility, one of the big things that we have coming up is really looking at the tree assessment and figuring out how much we can do and without affecting the trees in a negative way. And so I would say that just off the cuff, the concern with adding in a lot of topography into a site like this is not the greatest thing for the existing trees. So the trees are something that we are very dedicated to keeping because this is a nice shady spot in a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of shade. So it is a priority for both our design team and the city of Boston. So I think that's, I don't think it's something that we will completely rule out, but we just wanted to let you know that there's there's thinking that we have to really think about the trees when we think about things like that. And then the last piece, so you're saying that you had a little bit of a preference for something that's moved in. I will say this, that in schemes 1 and 2, there's the opportunity to move and have a gate system. And that's really the idea for both of these when we have a playground that is closer to the street. We would be putting in a fence that would have a gate on it so that we could monitor, and that it was something that would be automatically closed so that it would be something that would be a little safer. Oh, I don't know how I just did that. Sorry about that.
Samantha?
Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Butera. I'm the principal of the Excel Academy Middle School that's adjacent to the park. I wanted to say first that we're so excited about this development. We love that park as it is, and this is going to make things just so much more exciting for the kids. And all 3 schemes look really fantastic to me, honestly. So thank you for all the hard work. I think just to give some background, we do have, currently we're not using that part of the park that's along Beddington Street. We direct students away from that right now. So I think if we utilize that as a play structure area, we would be able to kind of like cautiously add students to that space when we needed to. Some of our older kids probably wouldn't need to use that space, and so we could direct them away from it. And so especially if there's a gate system, I think that would help us with the flow of traffic for students. And just to make sure that we're like maintaining that space well. So I think those two options are exciting to me. But in scheme 3, I love the idea of having a walking track around the basketball court. And I think reducing the size of the basketball court should be fine for our usage of it. And so I can't say that I have so much of a preference, except that some of our older 7th grade larger students, when they, larger student body group, when they start to play ball, they really get into it. So having more open space tends to be helpful to give them some, places to really spread out and play and have a good time. So I don't have a strong preference, but I would say that all 3 seem really useful and have definite merits. And overall, we're just really excited to see the space get upgraded.
So I should say, not only to you, Samantha, but to anybody who has comments, there are a lot of things within each scheme that are kind of mix and match. So for folks in the community, if we hear that people like one thing versus another, the fact that a walking loop or a track in and around the basketball court and through the open play area might be good for Excel Academy. That doesn't necessarily only have to stay in scheme 3. We could incorporate shrinking a court and doing that loop path into the other schemes. So I just want anybody who's on this call who has been thinking about these things, we're not necessarily saying you have to take scheme 3 in its entirety if you like certain things about it. So thank you for your comments, Samantha.
Matthew?
Hi. I was wondering, has the Parks Department or the team, the design team, analyzed, like in scheme 1, you have a kind of a seating area next to the playground. In Cuneo Park, which was recently redone, there's a similar layout. And maybe some people on the call can speak to this. I don't have kids, but if you have kids playing on the playground, do parents like to have the separate seating area where they could sit at a picnic table and just keep an eye on the kids? I just wonder if that's something that's of value to users of the playground. I do like I like everything, and I look forward to seeing how the designs get refined based on the tree analysis. And I guess I would only just comment that I hope that all the finishes can be top quality, wrought iron gates to match a lot of the historic fencing in the neighborhood just down the street at the historic cemetery, and also at Cuneo Park and the Jewish cemetery. So thanks very much. I'm excited about this project.
Thank you.
I can speak a little bit to the comments about having, tables and chairs and things within the playground area. I mean, in all of these, we have some benches throughout, so that we find that it's always helpful if there are comfortable places for parents or grandparents or whoever the adult in charge is to be there with kids, to have a place to congregate themselves. And so we do, in any of these scenarios, try to incorporate some of these things. I think one of the things that we see about the front area along Bennington Street is that there is a lot of tree cover and a lot of shade I was out there with Annie and Jessica and my design team this summer on a really hot day. And it is pretty incredible what those trees do as far as cooling. And so to provide gathering underneath there, whether it's benches, which we show in all schemes, or if it's tables and chairs, we think it's really important. As far as the finishes of fencing and things like that, I think that we want to balance all of that with budgetary constraints, and we do want to make sure that things are resilient and long lasting. So we hear you on that.
Thanks. And just one other thing, I like the idea in that was presented in scheme 2, the kind of box tiered seating. I could see kids really enjoying that and just hanging out, talking. That's a great addition, and I hope that stays. Thanks very much.
I appreciate that comment. I will say that the reason why we did that along this area between the basketball and the open play space in option 2 is because we did observe the middle schoolers before and after school hanging out on an area that does actually have it's currently a concrete box that houses some utilities. And that was one of the areas that was being hung out on. And so it does provide an opportunity for more of that.
Britt. Hello, I'm Britt. I live on 548 Bennington, so I'm on the southwest corner of the picture. I'm in a butter, right below Skip and Dottie. And I kind of came up with a bunch of comments that may or may not be helpful for each of the schemes. And I love that they're kind of mix and match a little bit. So my one question was whether or not you guys had thought of, or if you had any ideas for a splash pad for this place. Because I didn't see that in any of the schemes.
I think that at this point, we were not bringing water in there more because of the amount of maintenance that is involved in it.
Okay.
At this point, yes, we were.
Okay. Okay. So for the first scheme, first of all, I definitely love keeping in the trees. The trees are absolutely beautiful and I love them in all 4 seasons. So maintaining them would be my absolute top priority as well. For the first scheme, I was going to ask if it would be, if at all possible, to switch the picnic area with the play area, just because that's going to be a lot of noise right below my living room window.
Yep, I see that. Sure. I mean,
yeah, that would be
certainly should keep that in mind. I appreciate that. Okay.
And then I don't know if you guys had seen the drain there, but there is a drain, and I'm assuming you did, but so drainage right there is a huge problem. And so if we did have the picnic tables there, it would just have to be raised. But I do like keeping in scheme 1, I do like keeping the open flexible area because there isn't really a safe area in this little area for bike riding and for scootering for little ones. So I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're learning how to ride their bikes. And it's just really nice to have this particular park next to us because it's safe to just kind of toddle around and not worry about getting hit by an adult bicyclist or a car. So I do like that in scheme 1. For number 2, I had a question about the benches in the middle. Is for the seating in the middle, would that be raised in such a way where like Excel would be able to would or would not be able to monitor both sides well? Like would they have, kind of an easy vantage point, or would it be raised up high enough so that stray balls wouldn't go into the open flexible area, but then would it also I wasn't a complete sentence.
Well, I think that the idea, I'll just answer that question right off, is that I think the idea behind those is that they are more at, say, seat height. So it's maybe 20 inches or so above the ground. So it might keep balls at the ground plane from going in from one space to the other, but certainly not any aerial. But the idea being that there's still very much a clear visual connection between the spaces.
Okay, okay. Okay. What's the other questions I had? And then, yeah, just with scheme 2, just having the play area kind of right under my window, that is a very dark area when pretty much all seasons it's very dark, even when the leaves are gone, just because of how the sun falls, it tends to be the place where people kind of do shady things. So I think kind of having that more well lit in either space would be probably my recommendation. Most people like to hide in there to commit all kinds of things. For scheme 3, I really like the walking path. I think that having that delineated line is amazing, and I think that, again, like with my concerns with having a place to ride bikes and walk, I think that's really great. And I think if it's all kind of at the same level, it'd be really wonderful for me as a parent just to walk along that path while my kids are playing, and gives me something else to do. I like having the playground closer to the Excel side for noise reduction. And I like having a space big enough for a bigger climbing structure that's different from the other playgrounds in the neighborhood. So I think that's really great. I do want to comment, though, that there are a lot of adults who use the basketball court year round. Like it's pretty much filled with adults from sun up to sundown, or even past sundown, really, in the summertime. And so I would say that the basketball court is mostly used by adults for the greater portion of the year. And so, I mean, I'm not sure if that really affects the size, but I just wanted to comment on that. And then my last question is, what kind of wall or structure would you have kind of abutting the houses, our house and then Skip and Dottie's, to either cut down on sand and or stray balls from popping over the fence?
So at this point, we were contemplating keeping the existing side walls, and it's really just the 2 walls that are the short walls on the ends on the street sides that will be coming down. And part of that is a budgetary concern, that to really redo those walls, you then wouldn't really have budget left to improve the rest of the space. And also thinking that may be an opportunity for a CPA grant, walls in particular, because they are from the 1919s, and that it might be something that could fall under a preservation fee. So the concern really is that is a big project, and in order for us to tackle it, it would really mean that we can't do a lot of the other things.
Okay. Are you going to keep go ahead.
I think we would want to improve either netting or fencing on the top.
Yeah, that's what my question is. Okay.
That would be something that we would improve, not necessarily take away. But as far as removal of the wall itself, we think that the investment in that is better spent. The money to invest in the park is better spent on other things within the park, and that we would encourage some other kind of grant writing for the wall preservation or restoration. I did want to say one thing about the concerns about the drainage towards your house in the front corner. And that in all of these schemes, we are really looking at how, when we redo paving, that we can improve the drainage both at the basketball court and this front section of the park. And so fixing the drainage is something that will be integral to the improvements that go along in the park. Thank you for all your comments. Appreciate it.
Skip and Dottie?
Yes, I think in looking at this, we have a preference for scheme 2, but a couple of questions, and I think Naomi touched upon it with the clarification from the arborist on the trees, because I think that's the one that might possibly remove the mature trees that are there. And I think when we did the site visit, I think everybody liked the trees and the benefit that they do provide. But certainly looking at some of them, we knew that some of them were not in the best of shape, and some of them were probably going to need to be removed and put them out of their misery. So what hopefully the arborist, looks at some of them that might have to be removed here in scheme 2 to be able to do that without feeling guilty that we're removing a tree that, is providing, as you say, much shade and to that area, as well as helping to cool things down, for people that are using the park. One of the things
let me just
Okay.
say a couple things about that. So we do have the arborist who's going to be coming sometime this winter and actually do a lot of pruning, which will seem like they're cutting a lot. But the trees have a lot of what's called deadwood in them, which is just branches that aren't viable anymore, that don't have leaves. There's still plenty of viable branches that do have leaves, but they're going to come and do safety pruning and deadwood pruning. And really, if you can see my screen and the little hand that I have, the difference between schemes 1 and 2 are just contemplating taking out those 2 trees that are kind of in the middle of the space. The rest of the trees are ones that we think are viable, unless we hear differently during the arborist's more in-depth assessment. Scheme 2 is really just looking at taking out those 2 trees in the middle. And then we were adding in new trees on the side. So we do want to balance that, and we will be looking at their recommendations.
Right.
And I want to jump in real quick too, because when they do come in and do their pruning this winter, that tree will not be removed in that process because they're still going to be doing additional testing on the viability of that. So if early January you see them come in and prune and that tree still remains, that does not mean that it was determined to be long-term. It just means it hasn't had the full evaluation done yet. Plus, great to hear from you again, Skip, too, from CUNY.
Oh, good. Yeah, good to see you, Nathan.
Right.
I know that the park is designed for the 5 to 12-year-olds, and that's great because I think Cuneo Park has the younger folks there. But I think as Britt had alluded to, the park is used by teenagers and adults. And so if the intention is to remove them from the park, then maybe going with scheme 3 and the reduction of the basketball court is the way to go. And then this way here, you won't have people, because they'll want a full court to be able to play to play basketball there. Whereas you say that the students, play in a smaller court. And I don't know, I think it does provide for adults as well as teens in terms of playing basketball there. For folks here. I mean, I see Britt there has made a comment about the Noise Park, but that's a ways away from here in terms of the basketball. So if that is the case in terms of the 5 to 12, I think that as a deterrent to having other people using the court other than what it's intended for, then maybe going with the smaller court would be the way to go in terms of that particular that there.
Yeah,
I
I
do-
don't think that the intention is to alienate any current user groups. I think that talking about the 5 to 12 specifically was the age group for the play equipment that we were so it's not, I think we want to make sure that there's something for kids maybe who are 5 to 12, but also younger kids and older kids and adults. So I understand your point that if we were to reduce the court, maybe we are just eliminating some of the users. I would ask this, and maybe this is something that Annie or Nate can respond to, as far as in the city of Boston, because there are trends in other communities to putting in those high school sized or middle school and high school sized courts instead of the full adult sized courts, because those actually are used more often, because typically adults will play on those as well. Most adults never get farther in their basketball careers than high school. So it's not as often as people want to play those full courts. So we've actually found in other communities that they do downsize them just so that they can have other amenities going on. And it doesn't necessarily eliminate the adult play. But I would ask that to the city of Boston to see if that's something that they would be concerned about in this community.
Sure. And I actually manage various courts citywide. So I oversee court renovations throughout the entire city. We do have plenty of courts that are at this 84-foot length that still host and have men's league basketball games at them. So the reduction of this size would not impact or necessarily exclude any groups from still using that. If anything, they'll not get quite as winded because it'll knock off a little bit of running during their game, but it still is fully usable during their games.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think that, what I've seen at the Cuneo Park is, and I know that's for the younger group, but you have kids that are playing on the structures there that are older than what it's designed for. And I think it interferes sometimes with the kids that the park is designed for. And you see them like climbing up on the top of the structure there, which they're not supposed to be anyways. And we've had to speak to them about that, so, I mean, again, I'm, since this is 5 to 12, I mean, I think that is certainly a need that we do have here. Based on, I think, what some of the folks that had attended the meeting, as well as some here this evening, are talking about in terms of their kids. So, I mean, it's great to see that we have that. I do like the track piece because I think, and I'm happy to see that, you said, Naomi, that the track could be incorporated in any of the schemes, because I do think that is a nice feature, especially if people wanted to walk. And when I say that, I'm talking about adults or, folks that, are looking to do laps kind of thing, or for, kids that are learning how to ride their bike or whatever. I don't know how wide that is, but I think that would be, nice for the kids to have. I guess, my last comment has to do with the wall and the on the side where the houses are. And I know, Naomi, you're talking about maybe CPA providing some grant monies there. I just wanted to try to understand what you were thinking, what already exists there now with regards to the fence that's there. Would you be looking at replacing that fence with a newer fence, and then maybe from there putting up netting to keep the balls from hitting the houses?
I think we need to study it a little further, but the idea being that the brick wall remains.
Yes.
And then that we do look at better fencing on top. So replacing the fence that's there, sorry, my voice, replacing the fence with a better option on the top. I don't know how high we can go. We'd have to look at the structural ability of that wall to carry something that was super high. So there's still some design options that we need to study in that. But the idea would be that the fence that's theirs right now would be replaced.
Okay, all right. Okay. But even with doing that, Naomi, were you thinking that if you replaced the fence, whether it remained at the same height, that you would put something on the fence like netting above it so that the balls don't go over, because that's what happens now with the fence that's there. The balls go over from the kids in the school. And I know they're not supposed to be playing soccer in there, but they do, and the ball goes over and hits the house and such. So is that what you were thinking, putting like netting on top of the fence, or just putting a fence up there and just leaving it at that?
I think that when I used the word netting, I was thinking it would either be fence or netting. I wasn't necessarily thinking that there was fence and netting. Again, I think we need to study that in detail. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's not basketballs that are going over. It's other use of other balls like soccer or other things. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I think we just need to take that into consideration for sure. I would say that if we were to go with something that was like scheme 3, where there was a companion open space next to basketball that was as wide open as basketball, you might be able to have, say, soccer happening in that quadrant, next to Excel as opposed to next to the houses. But you can't control kids sometimes, they'll do that. So we'll take that into consideration to understand that it's not the basketball that's going over, that there are other things, and we need to think about that fence on top of the wall.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
This
you.
is great to see this, moving along.
I know there's things going on in the chat, Nathan. I don't know if you've if
Yes,
there's
I've been trying to
chats to the larger group, or if there are other people that have opinions raised.
Yeah, I don't know if people have been being able to follow. Oh, Samantha, I see your hand up. I'm gonna defer it to you before I go through the chat. Be able to unmute yourself now.
Yeah, thank you. I just realized I wanted to add one more point, which was we do have students with ADA compliant requirements, and I'm sure that's a part of your planning process as well. But we would love to see, we have had 3 electric wheelchair students using electric wheelchairs within the park. They can navigate the current park really well, and so I expect that won't be any different going forward, but excited to see how the ADA compliance will play a role here.
Yeah,
And-
we have that always in the very forefront of any work that we do. Our goal is as much, universal access to the spaces within the park, as well as to as many pieces of the equipment as possible. So we definitely will keep that in mind.
And that's a good transition, because that was exactly one of the comments that Jessica made as well, hitting right on universal access. And as Naomi said, we strive for as much as possible. That doesn't always mean we can have everything, but we, as much as the site allows, we strive for to make sure it's accessible. And so just going through, there was some comments about lighting, and the lights that are currently there are up inside the tree canopies, as I'm sure you're all aware. So when they're fully leafed out in the summer, even if they're working, they would be inside tree canopy. We'll be looking at doing lighting there that's appropriately scaled, as well as with shields, so that we're not casting light into any of the adjacent homes. And then there, continuing to scroll all the way back, there was, with some of the questions about seating, there was also the comments that parents tend to sit on the walls at Cuneo, which we do have some slight walls around here, but I don't think quite at the same comfort level that you would be seeing at this site. I think that's fairly up to date on, and then another vote for stronger ball containment measures on the wall. I think I got you guys up to date on the chat.
Oh, Skip and Dottie have their hands up again.
Well, here, real quick, I just got another comment in that, and it said, Naomi, I think you had mentioned, were you going with the 84-foot length on the basketball court?
Yeah, and in scheme 3, we were taking it down to 84 in length.
And what is it? Is it 92 right now?
It's 9. Yes, it's 90. It's long. It's actually bigger than 92, according to the
Okay.
survey.
Yeah, which 92 is actually the correct dimension it should have been. So yeah, so the 84 is not overly drastic. And again, the thing that you see with those reductions, if you ever played in a very old gym, you always lost the sides and the 3-point line that was cut off here. When we shrink our courts, what we're shrinking is the center of it, right? So you're still going to have the same playability under the basketball, under the hoop in the key. It's just going to be a little bit shorter in the middle. So yeah. Skip and Dottie.
Yeah, let me see, I just lost my train of thought here. Oh, the locks and or the, I know you had mentioned gates. Is it the plan to have the park be open from like dawn to dusk kind of thing? Because currently it's, as you know, because there isn't anything to keep people out of the park. It's open 24/7, even though it's, it's not supposed to be. But so would the fencing or gates that you're looking at be looking to, have that closed at certain hours?
We would most likely not be locking them in the evening and kind of go on the honor system of when the park is closed and when it's not. I know at Cuneo we do lock and unlock that. I think the scale of that fence and kind of that being on the corner there lends itself a little bit towards that. Whereas this, hopefully with some of these improvements, we're going to have better sight lines through there to discourage some after hours activities that we wouldn't want in there. So I think the goal would be to not be locking this.
Is the concern with that, Nate, that it has to do with the unlocking and the locking and the staffing and whatnot? Because I know that the neighbors there, like at Cuneo, have committed to opening and closing that, and maybe like with Cuneo and this park here, maybe a park committee could be established. The friends of the McLean Park and people could be involved to do that, to help the city so that it's not looking like, because it's unfortunate, but the parks that we have that are well maintained and remain in good shape are the ones that have some boundaries for them in terms of hours and operation. And like Cuneo, like the Massport with the field, down on Horror Street there. So I'm just concerned that if that weren't maybe added in, that the park here may fall into disrepair or problematic issues may result. So just something to think about.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I always advocate for friends groups. You guys are the eyes and the ears and at our parks much more than our staff is. So you're able to keep on things and be much faster response on if issues do arise. So Christine, who we do have on the call, and our contact was listed earlier, is the primary contact for our department for establishing friends groups. which our friends groups can be at varying levels. It can just be, once a year park cleanup. It could be all the way to, doing full on planting and larger improvements. What I would say in terms of locking this is that our gates will have a lock component of it. So if it does turn out to be a major issue, we can revisit it. But most likely we would at least try and have it be more open at the beginning. And then we can kind of evaluate as people are using the park. One person in the comment put in there that at 6:40 they go through the park every morning. So we just wouldn't want to be excluding people if not necessary. But again, if activities start happening there, certainly something we can revisit.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Brett? Should be able to unmute. There you go.
Sorry. Yeah, I definitely think having some sort of gate, whether it be a short, like pony size, I don't know what the phrase is, but just some sort of short gate that you can just unlatch, or a 7-year-old can do that, would be fine. I think having some sort of gate is helpful for keeping, there's a lot of mopeds that come through at night and at like midnight or 1 a.m. or motorcycle, like full on, motorcycles that come through and just kind of do wheelies and stuff in there. And so having a gate of sorts, even if it's not locked, just kind of discourages that. So that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that we were taking that into consideration by putting gates on both streets. I think the other thing that we were doing in most of the schemes was also staggering the entrances so that they're not just perfectly lined up with each other anymore.
Yeah,
so they might be offset a little bit, or there's things that you'd have to like move around if you're on some kind of motorized bike. So definitely keeping that in mind. We'll continue to do that.
My husband just came home and he definitely agrees that keeping the playground away from our house would be preferred.
Maybe we could do a zip line from your house right down into it.
I've actually thought of it. We've actually discussed it. That would be amazing. That would be much easier for me than to just send my kids out the window. I would really like that actually.
Right.
Don't call the cops on me, please.
I know. I was going to say we're going to have to strike that from the community meeting.
Jessica, you didn't hear that.
Jessica Curtis has her hand raised.
Jessica?
Hi, everyone. So I try never to disagree with Skip when I can help, but I'm the vote for keeping it open. I do feel like when I'm walking through there early in the morning, there are often people who are doing the same and are resting as they're waiting for the bus to come through. And I think it just creates this really nice ambiance in the neighborhood that there's this beautiful public space that we can access. I'm not opposed to the gate at all. I also think that makes it safer for the younger kids once there's a playground there. But again, would just put a vote for a gate that could be opened for someone in a wheelchair or with upper mobility challenges. I don't know if they actually make gates like that, but I'm curious for Samantha too, who has electric wheelchair users. Sometimes reaching from a wheelchair is difficult to get that kind of latch up. So just a vote for thinking about universal access in that instance as well. Thanks.
That's a great point, and we'll definitely look into gates that can accommodate those as much as the industry has, as you mentioned. All right. Any other comments, questions?
So I'll take it from here, Nate. Thank you.
Right.
And we'll schedule our next community meeting and have more concrete plans to show you. But a lot of what I want to do is thank everybody for their time this evening and their thoughtful comments. This was incredibly helpful and consistent with the really good feedback that we got in the first community meeting, which was a totally different environment because it was a beautiful Saturday. And Crowley Cottrell was kind enough to bring pastries and coffee, which just makes for a totally different experience. But this was very, very helpful, and you've given us a lot to think about and a lot to work with. And it'll be great to meet up with everybody as soon as we can schedule the next meeting. But we appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you after the new year.